मूर्ति भेद विभागिने व्योमवद् व्याप्त देहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ओम शांति शांति शांति। श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरि ओम तत्सत्. So yesterday we did this particular sutra, Kavargadishu Maheshwaradhyaha Pashumataraha. Now this particular sutra, that how we have imperfect knowledge, and imperfect knowledge is the cause of bondage. Because the only knowledge which is perfect is knowledge of the self. All of the knowledge is there, you connect with it, and these different forms and different content of your knowledge products, whatever you're doing, they are definitely useful in your everyday life. However, all these forms of knowledge shall not give you that self awareness or self realization which holds the key to liberation. Therefore, Jnanam Bandhaha, Jnanadhishtanam Matrika. And we had done this particular sutra, but because and now it's saying Kavargadishu Maheshwaradhyaha Pasumataraha, Maheshwari Adi. All these are Pasumatar, these are the mothers of the beasts, who means these Banamatrikas. They hold the secret. We have knowledge, we have constructions, different kind of theoretical constructions in our mind, different concepts, different hypotheses and theories about how the sansara is functioning. And all these theories, all these concepts, all these explanations, which we entertain in us, which is not about the self, it's about the external reality. It's about maybe the subtle internal reality. Yet it is not about the reality of the self. And how can we be aware of the reality of the self? Right now, what we are doing satsang with the help of language. Now the trick is there, that is why he's mentioning this to us. If we are aware of the magical power of language and the mystery behind this whole signs of language, the signs of these alphabets, then we will be making use of this language to silence the mind and to ascend to a plane of complete unison with ourselves, with the Paramashiva Tattva that we are. And then there is a reverse journey. You are making use of all these forms of knowledge that you are producing, or you are imitating, or you are inheriting, or you are assuming, you are gaining through different ways. However, unless you know the secret as to how they can actually turn you into beasts, they will turn us into beasts in what sense? They will make us dependent. They will make us lose our Swarupa and Swatantriya. Then we have Apurna Manyata. We have a sense of insufficiency. We keep seeking validity. We keep seeking somebody to tell us what you are doing is right. That state of ignorance, that state of anxiety, helplessness, vulnerability, if you look at that state of subjectivity, at the root of this is imperfect knowledge. And any knowledge which is not knowledge of the self is not perfect knowledge. Only knowledge of the self is perfect knowledge. I just wanted quickly to sort of remind ourselves as to what all we had discussed, because we have lost touch with this first chapter. So, if you remember, Jnanadhisthana Matrika, the main thing is that Swarupavarane cha asya saktayaha satodathitaha. Now, all these energies, you see the Maya Shakti of Paramashiva, which is actually liberating at a higher plane, becomes binding at a low plane. The same Sakti with which he creates the samsara creation, is neither real nor unreal. The truth of the matter is, this whole samsara is essentially the external orientation of that Shiva Tattva. Aham idam. The moment you have that Vimarsha Shakti, is oriented towards something outside, that thing becomes samsara and we are trapped there. It's like we are in deep meditation, and then that particular thing is that para state. The moment there is some diversion, distraction, then our attention, then you listen to things, then you are trying to understand that, and then you get trapped in reality, and then you are all over the place. So that particular thing is explaining, and the next sutra will also help us unravel it. So there are two words, if you remember, we had discussed a lot. Pratyodhavaha. This sloka was like this: Paramrita rasapayas tasya yah pratyodhavaha tena aswatantratam eti sacha tanmatra gocharaha. Paramrita rasa payas. You see that Paramashiva is Paramrita, and that is that rasa, that that particular the energy of Lord Shiva at that highest level. Yaha, and then there is a pratyaya udbhava. What is that pratyaya udbhava? If you remember, there is a grahya grahaka bheda. Grahya is object of knowledge, grahaka is the knower. In that perfect state, blissful meditative state, there is no object subject duality. It's a little philosophical, but not very difficult to grasp. He's saying when Paramashiva starts creating samsara, he orients his consciousness to the outside world. And when he orients his consciousness towards the outside world, there is pratyodhava, because there is some kind of a that nirvikalpaka jnana, that atma jnana, where there is no duality. He's not thinking about anything. There is no karta, there is no karma, something to be known, something to relate to, nothing of that sort. Now there is sabikalpaka pratyodhava, because he gets engaged with something else, connects with something. That is what is samsara. And you cannot have pratyodhava, you cannot have that any kind of thought or knowledge without language. That will happen with language. So, pratyodhava, the means to pratyodhava is savdanu vedana. There is some sort of a game played by sound. It's a mediating role. It's mediated through language. All our thoughts are mediated through language. Perfect meditation, it's we start our satsang, for example, with all the Shastra Sarcha, we meditate. When you go to the highest level of your meditation, you will not be discussing these theories. These are about the preparatory state, and that is why we are doing this satsang. The ultimate state of meditation shall be leaving behind all these mechanisms, all these do's and don'ts about what to think, what is correct, what is right, what's wrong. You go beyond that. And then you are going beyond that level where language is a mediating force, language is also a constraining impact. It also limits your thought process. With language, with thoughts, we cannot reach truth. We have thoughts about truth, we have theories about truth, but theories are not truth. We can have very elaborate theories about things, but that's not the truth. The truth is no different from who we are. When we analyze all these and start to stabilize, and slowly your thought processes, your meditative repose becomes subtler and subtler, at the ultimate level, these things are left behind. And then you are graduating to the most important level, that is the Turyavastha. But in Kashmiri Saivism, they also have a Turyatita Avastha. They go till the seventh state. And we'll be dealing with the fourth state today. So, what happens is, whenever you have pratyudbhava, how that pasumataraha word is used, they are the mother of these words, these varnamatrakas. Why are they saying this? Why language is a source of limitation of our thinking process? It is an instrument of our thinking process. There was a beautiful statement once made by Mahatma Gandhi. He was a very insightful person. He said, perhaps language is the best available imperfect vehicle for expressing our feelings and thoughts. Best available, however, imperfect vehicle. It's not a perfect vehicle, because what we capture in words is never a true representation of our thoughts and feelings. But there's no other way to express, so we take the help of language. When we are thinking about reality, reality is only the self. The rest is just an expanse of it. It's an inverted representation of it or a projection of it. So we are making use of language to unravel the mystery about Atma. With language, avang manasho gochara, we cannot unravel the mystery of the Atma. We will do it for the purpose of practice, and that is why you are doing this. But he's saying the moment you have this pratyudbhava, the first thing is, atasmin tad buddhi starts. Atasmin, where Atma is not there, you think that is Atma, that is real, that is, you know, Anatmani Atma Buddhi. Everything happens. Dehatma Buddhi. I am a young man. I'm an old person. All that. And so the Pasupati becomes Pasu. Lord Shiva becomes Jiva or a human being through us. Who is that Shiva? Shiva is one. We cannot be you and me and they and become Shiva. No. Individually, we can never be the universal. So there is no universal consciousness which can be cased in the mind of one individual. It can be real because it's always real, absolutely real. When the individual transcends his individuality, he sort of establishes himself in that all expansive, all pervading universal consciousness. So an individual can get immersed, can dissolve himself, can be one with the universal consciousness, but the individual cannot be a receptacle, cannot be a container, cannot be a vehicle for the universal consciousness. As Ramakrishna Paramahansa used to say, that once a salt doll wanted to measure, fathom the depth of ocean, and it never returned. Once you get into the ocean, you can't come back. You are made of salt. You get dissolved in water. Similarly, we to become Shiva will have to completely get rid of the Jiva in us, and we can dissolve ourselves in that supreme consciousness. That is the only way we can get liberation. And we will not remain there as an individual anymore. When we have this name and form reappear, we will be constrained by language, and all these things happen. Will we become Pashu again after Atmajnana? That is what we were discussing in the 19th, and we'll go to the 20th, where we'll go. So you have, these different forms of these pratyodabhava when it happens. So, the Maya Tattva starts, and then you have this Kala, Vidya, Raga, Niyati, and Kala. These are the Pancha Kanchukattvas, five veiling things. You will listen to the lecture on the fourth sutra so that we can have you can have a more elaborate understanding of it. You know that all of us as students have heard this from our teachers, that you, by understanding the laws of gravitation, you are able to overcome the laws of gravitation. So why we are doing this satsang and why we are trying to focus so much on the mystery of language is because if we understand how language can work on us, we can pierce through this. We know the laws of nature. We know the laws of Prakriti, of these Varnamatrikas, and how they can conquer us, how they can sort of rule over us, hold us captives. And when we understand the secret ways in which this whole thing unfolds and on, then we are able to see through this whole process, and we graduate slowly and steadily without any deviation, and we pierce through this veil of ignorance We go through this veil of ignorance towards greater autonomy, greater self realization, greater light and illumination. That is why we are doing this. So, this particular Jnanam Bandha, again and again, we have already discussed earlier, that this is a binding force. It is Bandhayatri. It sort of binds you. It's also sort of Siddhi Utpadika. It can also give you liberation. Why? Same language. Somebody is abusing others, somebody is getting angry with others, somebody is using it in a loving way and healing others. Somebody is doing this mantra siddhi. Somebody is speaking in a particular way and he's a great orator and he's a history maker. So it remains, the whole thing remains the same. But our intentions are different, our skill sets are different, and the way we make use of language varies. So one is leading us towards liberation, the other one is pulling us down towards a state of self imprisonment by our own karmas. Okay, so essentially you have this jnana and a kriya. These are the two forms of the Shakti that we discussed yesterday, Jnanatmika and a Kriyatmika Shakti. And they become this Jnana and Kriya, they are becoming 9 types because of these Vargas. And you can also say that sometimes they become the Panchasad Varna Matrika, 50 Varna Matrikas they take. And each of them are influencing us. That is what we have. There is a beautiful karika in this Panda Shastra because they are so well interlinked. Both are very closely interlinked. Surupa varane chasya saktayah satotodyatah yatah savdanuvedhena navina pratyudbhavah. Savda anuvedhena vina pratyudbhava na bhavati. Without using sabdanuvedhana, without the mediation through words, through language, you do not have emotions rising in you, you don't have thoughts rising in you, you don't have any movement, any emotive action, or any movement to achieve anything physically or in an intellectual way, starts with language. And that is why it's so important, as they say, to have a language. In fact, a lot of these French structuralists and post structuralists, all these continental philosophers, they heavily give a lot of importance to the power of language. But we are not going that way. So language is a very, very key role, and it's very important. And therefore, we have already discussed that. Again, this particular issue was explained to us in that thing. The key thing is all the mantras are varnatmika. And all these varnas are Sakyatmika, and Shakti is Shivatmika. So this is how they explain to us what is the importance and what is the secret hiding in this whole gamut of reality called language. First thing is whatever mantras, whatever words, whatever sentences we are using with the help of Varna Matrikas. So these Varnas are not realities in themselves. Look how we can look at them in a reverse way. So each Varna is a Varna Matrika. Because it's a Varna Matrika, it's representing a Sakti. That Parashakti is only in a way where it has the veiling power, it has become a Varna Matrika. It's a Pasumata Matrika. It is actually the mother of a beast. It creates that bonded human being who loses sight of his Parama Shiva Swarupata. Right? So all the mantras that we are chanting, unless we understand this, that these mantras are Varnatmika, all the Varnas are Sakyatmika. Sakti can never exist without Shiva. Whenever we say this Sakti, we are essentially saying that this Sakti is what? It is all the time in a state of inherence, in a Samavaya Sambandha with Paramashiva. It's not different from that. It's inalienable, inseparable. It can never be kept at a distance or separation from that Shiva Tattva. Sakti means what? Sakti of Paramashiva. So, Once we know this truth, now we are on the path of liberation. These mantras we are chanting, Vicha mantras or any mantras, once we know, then we are using that language, whatever we are using, whatever sentences, whatever words. If we have that sort of a feeling, we are very powerful because everybody speaks, but somebody speaks with great impact and somebody just blabbers away. He speaks and he speaks a lot of things. Maybe very sweet, sometimes very caustic, very painful, very rude, but without any impact, any lasting impact, which is positive, which sort of liberates us. Sometimes soothing words of a person when you are in great depression, few words can relieve your stress, right? The power of speech, in fact, emerges from the spiritual truth that the language is not a secular thing. There is a lot of mystery behind it. And in fact, it is just an aspect of the absolute spiritual reality called Paramashiva, because again and again, we remind ourselves that there is no state, no reality which is not Shiva. So the Varnas, the mantras are Varnatmika, Varnas are Sakyatmika, and the Sakti is Shivatmika. That is how we can meditate and we can. So this Apurna Manyata, okay, this there was this mantra, Sarve Varnatmaka mantraha Teja Sakyatmika Priye Saktistu Matruka Genya Sacha Genya Shivatmika. This was the couplet I was looking for. Sarve Varnatmaka mantras. All the mantras are made up of Varnas, alphabets. Teja Sakyatmika Priye. Lord Shiva is explaining to Ma Parvati. Just look at the whole joke. Parvati is not different from Paramashiva. It's the self-awareness of Paramashiva. It's in a very allegorical way these couplets are made. But look at the beauty of this. He's telling, oh darling, do you know that these mantras are made of varnas and they are Sakyatmika? And then he's saying Saktistu Matrika Genya, and these Saktis are Varna Matrikas. That's how they are known. Sacha Genya Shivatmika. And this Matrika Sakti, or wherever they're coming, they are Shivatmika. Their Swarupa is Shiva Swarupa. And then he's saying, Mantranang Jiva Bhutatu Yasmrita Sakti Ravyaya Taya Hina Vararohe Nishpalaha Sarada Bravata. Mantranang Jiva Bhutatu Yasmrita Sakti Ravyaya. You see, you can do a lot of chanting and do mantras and everything. That's what I'm saying, that some mantras, even if you don't know anything, they will give you some benefits. But when you know the inner secret of this whole thing, you will get liberation. He's saying Sarada Bhravat. Saradavra is what? The autumnal clouds don't give you rain. They appear and they disappear. They just, you might have patches of white in the sky during the autumn period. They don't give you any rain. That means they are nisphala. That means they do not give you any results. When you know the secret of all this, then when you are doing sadhana, you get the results. And what is that result he's talking about? He's not talking about siddhis, which are intermediate level, preliminary level siddhis, but he's talking about the ultimate follow, which is liberation, which is Atmajnana. But that Atmajnana is possible when we start a reverse journey. The reverse journey is this tantalizing phantasmagoria of dreams that we see all around, which we call samsara around us. This frightening or deluding, colorful, and diverse multitude of colors and people and emotions, which attracts, which tempts, which frightens. All this, when we withdraw our senses and we return to that supreme consciousness within us, and we graduate, abandon the cage, kiss the sky, be part of that universal, unlimited reality of pure consciousness. Now, this is, I'm not getting further into details because there is a lot of, we have already done it, and if you want, you can go back to that sutra. And now, Kavargadishu Maheswaryadyaha Pashumataraha, this is how I was telling you that there's a little left, and I will touch upon these tomorrow. Okay, now that is done. In the next sutra now, he's clarifying. Let's look at the Siva Sutra Vimarshini, because that is our mother text that we are following. But let's start with the Bhritya Bhatta Kalata. Trishu Jagaradi Padeshu. Jagaradi means waking and dream state, and Shushupti, deep state, deep sleep. Chaturtha Suddha Vidya Prakasharupam Turyananda Rashatmakam Dhama Tailavat iti Yatha Tailam Kramena Adhigam Adhigam Prasarat Asrayam Apnoti Tatha Asechyam. You know what they're saying? It's very beautiful. He's saying that you are, let's imagine, in a deep state. Okay. So we have already saying Vijavadhanam, we have done that sutra, that you constantly return and meditate on the Shakti of Paramashiva, which is the source of this whole universe. We are in Anavapaya, the preliminary sadhana. We are not in the Sambhavapaya, where very highfalutin, complex, theoretical ideas are shared with us by the preceptor, the Granthakara. Here we are dealing with the beginning of sadhana, where he has to make it things a little simpler, and how we can do sadhana. What are the techniques that we need to follow? We are not going to be there, because he says, if you remember, Udyama Bhairavaha, okay, the Jnana Dhisthana Matrika, what are the fifth sutra, if you remember, Udyama Bhairavaha. So he quickly establishes himself in that whole unitary vision and self awareness. There is no destination as such. Once he tries, he immediately reaches there with the help of Guru's blessings and his own willpower and his wish. So he in the 20th saying, Trishu Chaturtham Tailavat Asechyam. Trishu means Trishu Avastashu. Chaturtham is that Turya Avastha, the fourth state. Jagrata, Swapna, and Susupti. These are the three states. In each of these three states, there is no self. These are imperfect states. Avasthatraya Shakshi, that is Atma. So that is called Turiya Avastha. Ma, Om. That is how different Upanishads talk about it. So once you go beyond that, that is the fourth state. You are in that Atmastha Avastha, that is the fourth state. He is saying Trishu Chaturtham Tailavat Asechyam. This is the advice given to us at the preliminary level of sadhana. What happens is that we sit in very deep meditation, and then we ascend to a very high plane of meditative repose, where, let's imagine, we go very close to experiencing the Siva Sutra. Let's presume how do we, when we come out and then you have to go to office, you have to take care of your children, you have to take care of your responsibilities and all that. What happens to the sadhana at that time? The sadhana loses all its importance because there are other things to attend to. He's giving very useful advice here. He's saying, Tailavat. So let's imagine that you have different, there is a staircase or something. You pour some oil on the top stair, and the oil will drip down, right? Similarly, through this meditation, once we are established, we have established ourselves in the Shuddha Vidya state, which is Prakashatmaka, taking us nearer and nearer to the Shiva Tattva, very close to Shiva Tattva, in order to ensure, because that is what he's saying, that you remember that sutra that we just couple of sutras, Vidya Vinase Janma Vinasa, Vidya Avinase, that is Kshemaraja commentary. Vidya Vinase is Varadaraja. Vidya means Ayathartha Vidya, false knowledge, which is Bandhana Atmaka. You terminate it, then there is no rebirth. Why? You will be in Atma Bhava. But here, Vidya Avinase, if we interpret like this, Vidya Avinase, Janma Vinasha, there shall be no birth and death. The cycle of birth and death shall come to an end if we are able to steadfastly hold our attention, hold our consciousness fully. We stay in that Suddha Vidya state, Vidya Avinase. How to stay in that state? That would be a question. How to hold ourselves in that particular state? That is a challenge. That is why now we're saying Trishu Chaturtham Tailavat Asechyam. So you do some sadhana, you do some deeper meditation, then you are going to office, then you are going to market, then you are going to temple. Even if you go to temple, remember you are not going to have Shiva consciousness. It requires serious sadhana in isolation. So you are all over the place. So Jagrata and Shopna and Turyavastha, in these three states, now you are disinfecting these states with Shiva consciousness. Like you have insecticide, right? So to get rid of mosquitoes, what do you do? Of course, not in other countries, but in India, certain parts you have. So you use mosquito repellents, or you have a mosquito net and stuff like that, or you have some kind of, you have some, spray, air spray, to just to sort of bring in some good fragrance, right? It's like that. That with that purity of that Shiva consciousness, with that you irrigate in a way other three states of your consciousness. You irrigate with the pure nectar, the pure fragrance, the truth. How do I put it? There are no words to express it. It's very difficult to carry blissfulness of your meditative state to other states. However, there is one handle given to us by God. It's called memory. It's called sanskara. And then you can do mantra japa. But he's saying you try to sprinkle a little of this pure consciousness. These are metaphoric ways of expressing. Sprinkle other states of your consciousness with the pure consciousness of Suddha Vidya where you are established. So you have the Samadhi dasa and a Bhuthana dasa. I mean, these are things we can practice. So Samadhi dasa, we are in deep meditation. There's very little distraction, right? We have a sense of bliss, we have a sense of unification, equanimity, unified consciousness, no disturbance. You can say there's a kind of God consciousness. And then you wake up or you fall asleep. The moment you wake up or you fall asleep or you go into deep sleep state, in none of these states you are having atmajnana or self-awareness. That's gone. You are divided, you are separated from yourself. What he's saying here is that sprinkle a little of that Shiva Tattva that you have experienced, carry that from there and sprinkle it little. You remember in olden days, for example, when you have a long journey to take, the mother would be giving her son some dry fruits. Okay, you will put into your mouth, long journey, you might, if you are walking somewhere, you have to do a trekking, you carry some dry fruits, put one dry fruit in your mouth as you walk, in order to make it easy. So that is how we can energize our other states, disinfect sansara out of our other states by sprinkling a little of the Shiva consciousness, Suddha Vidya, in other states. That's what he's saying. Let's look at the last commentary. Okay, Trishu Jagaradi Padeshu Chaturtham Suddha Vidyad Prakasha Rupam Turyananda Rasatmakam Dhama Tailavat iti Jatha Tailam Kramena Adhikam Prasharat Asrama Apnoti Tatha Asetyam. So sprinkle a little, like the oil drips down. Similarly, your pure consciousness will slowly influence your other states, slowly transform your other states, and this is very inspiring. Because even in your waking state, you can have a lot of contradictory thoughts. But if your sadhana is steadfast and you are being able to hold yourself, hold your attention in the Suddha Vidya state for a longer time and with greater intensity, and you can carry it a little into your waking state, and slowly it will also go into your subconscious. You must have also seen it. You must have seen a lot of funny dreams when you were a child. Must have dreamt of doing certain things, you know, like you had fights with your friends and stuff like that. You will find all kinds of weird things. May have done it as a child. But now, even in your dream state, your subconscious self is also behaving as a moral being because of your sadhana, because of your moral universe in which you hold yourself. Even in your dream state, slowly and gradually with sadhana, you find that even in your deep dream, you're aware of who you are. No, no, I'm not going to do that. You don't become a child and doing abnormally. Once in a while you see this kind of dreams, because most of these dreams are lucid dreams in which you're kind of self-aware. This is how the Shiva consciousness percolates, trickles down, slowly transforms other states. What is the benefit? The benefit is like this, that this particular yogi, through his intense sadhana, is enjoying that Turyananda, that the pleasure and the blissfulness of the fourth state, even during other three states. So he's a sant, or he's a sannyasi, or he's a yogi, not only in his samadhi state, which he is, but he slowly also behaves like that yogi, is never self oblivious, but also in other states. That is what he's mentioning. Tatha asechyam. त्रिषु अपि पदेषु उन्मेष उपशान्त्यात्मक आद्यन्तकोट्यः परिस्फुरता तूर्यरसेन मध्यदशामपि अवस्टम्भयुक्त्या व्याप्नुयात् येन तन्मयो भावम् आप्नुयात्. So the intermediate states, that's what we are discussing. The intermediate states of your being, of your movement, of your subjectivity, of your physical existence. If you sprinkle them with this Siva consciousness, they also slowly get transformed, and you are able to experience that blissful state of Turyavastha even during other states. That is briefly about it. Now, instead of, because that is kind of is mentioned here, so I'm straightway going to the last commentary, which sort of sums up Kshemaraja in a very simple way. Ataeva Purvakta Yuktivihi. Ataeva Purvakta Yuktivihi means two reasons as to why you should do it. One, you know that Jnanam Bandha and Jnanadhisthana Matrika. So you need to know the secret of language. When you have waking state or dream state, you are doing everything with the help and influence of, you are under the grip of these Bandha Matrikas, which have veiling role to play. That's number one. Number two, Bijavadhanam. Constantly you have to stay. Vidya, Vidya, what was that? Vidya avinase janma vinashaha. Vidya avinase. So you have to protect your Shuddha Vidya. So these are the yuktis, the rationale as to why you should do a bit of sprinkling of your waking state and dream state and other three states, including deep sleep. Of course, you are not there. What sadhana you do? We are in deep sleep, we are in deep sleep. But the whole focus actually is on the Jagrata Avastha. Swapna also is not in a full control. So even though he mentions Trishu Chaturtham Tailavat Asechyam, he mentions, it starts with all sadhana, starts with Jagrata Avastha. It starts with Jagrata Avastha. So incrementally, we would be sprinkling that Shiva consciousness, our Shuddha Vidya state during a Jagrata Avastha. Try to be more and more in tune with what we have realized during a satsang or during a meditation. He's saying, Ata eva purvakta yuktivihi suddha vidya tat sampraptam api. Even if you establish there, yatha asya na pranashyati. Be careful that you don't lose that state. It's like you have got a very good job. You need to do right things to stay there. That's what he's saying. Tatha sarvasu dasasu, therefore in all other dasas means Jagrat, Swapna and Shushupti, yogina savadhanena bhavyam ityaha. So you should practice it. And if you're a yogi, you should do this. Trishu Chaturtham Tailavat Asechyam. So in the three states, the fourth state, the beauty, the bliss, the power, the love, all good things of the fourth state, you sprinkle that in other three states. Trishu Jagrata Swapna Susupta Padeshu Chaturtham Suddha Vidya Pratharupam Turya Chamatkaratmakam Dhama Yogina Sada Asechyam. So constantly you try to pull yourself. What do you mean by sprinkling of that Shiva Tattva thing in other states? It's only reminding yourself constantly about your Swarupa and returning to that. How does that happen? You know, my spiritual counselor, Sri Anurakta in Pondicherry, I remember once I was to be in distress, I was working in a cyclone reconstruction project, and a lot of these projects, and you have to fund them and evaluate them. So there was a lot of stress, and I called him. I said, "What kind of sadhana am I going to do?" I mean, I'm talking about half a century back. I said, "What sadhana am I going to do? There are too many problems I'm dealing with." He says, "Okay, do one thing. You do your office work, you do your project management or whatever. Is it possible for you to close your eyes 2 minutes every hour? Remember Kali, nothing else. Can you do that? Do that. 2 minutes every hour." That was a great help. That is one way of, in a kind of sprinkling your daily lives with God consciousness. This is something much more esoteric because we are talking about Anavapaya. I'm just talking about what everybody can do and should do in his everyday life. He's saying yogina savadhanena bhavyam trishu chaturtham tailavat asecham trishu jagra swapna susupta vadeshu chaturtham suddhya vida pratharupam turyam chamatkaratmakam. Because you know that we have done it in the Sambhavapaya. Chamatkaratmakam. This is very magical. As Sri Aurobindo said, everything is possible when God touch is there. Chamatkaratmakam dhama yogina sada asechyam. Yatha tailam kramat prasat swasrayam vyapniyat. If you put oil, it will drip down, it will go to that particular plate. If you've seen that, how they do in the tribal areas, the communities, they collect oil and they put the oil seeds in a small bag and they put a big stone in it, and then they have a particular pathway they prepare, and then you have a collecting pot. And over a couple of days, there's no work to be done. They just put a big stone on that, and there's a small cotton bag in which they put the oil seeds. And then the oil drips down in a way, it's all gravitation, nothing else. And in 3 4 days, the pot is full and they collect the oil. So, Suddhe Vidya Pratharupam Turyam Turya Chamatkaratmakam Dhama Yogina Sada Asechyam Yatha Tailam Kramat Prasarad Swasrayam Vyapniyat Tatha Jagaradishu Unimesha Upasantyadi Antakatyoho Parishphurata Turyananda Chidrasena. That is the Chidrasha, Chaitanya Rasha, Chidrasha. The Chidrasena Madhyadasayam Api Adri Kuryat. That sprinkling I was saying. These are all metaphoric expression. Everything also becomes a little wet because you are sprinkling that pure Shiva consciousness there. Adri Kuryat Yena, by which Paramrita Samvid Arnave. Paramrita Samvid. Paramrita is Paramashiva. Samvit is pure consciousness. Arnava is that ocean. In that ocean of perfect truth consciousness, Tadatmyatam apniyat. So you don't exist anymore as an individual. You don't feel constrained by your individuality. You take a dip in that ocean of truthful, blissful, universal purity, equanimity, whatever way you want to express it. Arthat, what is it? Vishwa Srishti आविर्भव आविर्भवनात्मकस्य उन्मेषस्य जागरदादि पदानाम् आद्यन्तकोटिषु उपशान्तितः परिशिष्टस्य तूर्यप्रकाशस्य एव रसः आस्वाद्यते. Now it's a very long sentence. If we make sense of it, what we're trying to say is, you see, Unmesha word has a lot of meaning. Unmesha is when Lord Shiva. Unmesha and Nimesha. Nimesha is Pralaya, Unmesha is Srishti. That's one way to look at it. Unmesha is also in the life of a sadhaka. Unmesha can also mean, that flash of Shiva consciousness which lifts you. Okay, Unmesha. So, he's saying, Vishwa Srishti Avir Bhavanatmakasya Unmeshasya. There is Kshobha, that word is mentioned. Kshobha is some kind of a disturbance in that harmony. Some kind of you have that spanda, that kampana, that universal consciousness. There is a spanda going on, and there is a kshobha, and suddenly some disturbance, out of which this whole sansar happens. You are talking about Big Bang. Centuries back, they're using all this word called kshobha. And so, here what happens is that this Srishti is unmesha, sudden appearance. Jagaradadi padanam adyanto kotishu upashantitaha. So in the beginning and the end, when you terminate all that, you're going to the fourth state. Parishishtasya Turya Prakasasya eva rashaha. So eliminate all that. The fourth state is actually present in all states. It's the avastatraya shakshi. So he's saying aswadhyate, but you can, if you're able to nullify, you have a beginning of Jagrata Avastha and end of Jagrata Avastha, beginning of Swapna Avastha, end of Swapna Avastha. You have beginning of Susupti Avastha, end of Susupti Avastha. Do you have a beginning and end of Turya Avastha? No, you don't have. That is that ultimate thing. It doesn't have a beginning or an end. So you can enjoy it. Tasma Srushti Rupa Unmeshopi Tad Avadhana Dadhya Bhyasat. When you meditate on that, okay, and that you firmly do it, Turiya Rasa Mai Karyam Shat. So even if you are having samsara, you are in your Bhuthana Dasa and everything, your life will be divinized in a way, sanctified through this practice. Jagra Swapna Susupteshu Turyo Bhoga Sambhavaha. He's saying earlier, we have already mentioned in the sutra number 11 and 7 in the first chapter. You can refer to them. So what he's saying, Jagrat Swapna Susupteshu Turya Bhoga Sambhavaha. So you remember in the seventh sutra, after this Udyama Bhairava and all that, he said, Jagrat Swapna Susupteshu Turya Bhoga Sambhava for this Bhairavapaya sadhaka at a very high state. So he's moving around and everything, but he's not affected by anything. He is able to experience that blissful state of being unified with Paramashiva all the time. That is what very briefly of this seventh one. And then iti purvakta sutre vishwatirna anubhava praptau udyama eva upaya matram asti. This is the only way. We are in Anavapaya. We're in a very preliminary stage. So how do we have this beautiful experience of being fully unified with the Paramashiva Tattva? He's saying start slow. This is the basic thing you can do. Tathacha Udyama Bhairava, the fifth sutra of the first chapter, Ityadina Sutrena Pratipadanam Bhavati. These have already been explained to you. Asyam Sito, in these states, Yogi, Udyama Sakti Chakram, Anusandhat, Sakti Chakra Sandhane, Vishwa Sangharaha. We have also done it. Sakti Chakra Sandhane. When we understand this, how all this world has manifested, what is the secret of it? And we do satsang, okay, this is how it's happening. It's like you're in a difficult office situation when 4 or 5 guys are playing some game. They have heard there's going to be a restructuring of your office. Then there'll be, instead of 5 departments, there'll be 3 departments. So what are the 2 departments, staff of which may pay some price because they will jumble them together in these 3 departments? Some people may lose their jobs. So everybody changes his CV. Everybody is trying to do assignments which will be in line with the prospective naming of these 3 departments. This happens in big corporates, including big banks. So you have change in their nomenclature. They'll show up, yeah, I do this, I do that. And then, they're fighting for. Once you know this game, if you are a very innocent, good guy, you're doing your job, they may make you pay the price. But if you know this game, okay, this is how it's happening, right? Then you are okay, but my CV is also good. So you also rework your CV, you also make your presentations, you also speak in a different language, you're just dealing with it. But we are dealing with something, I'm just using that as an example, that when the sadhaka knows this is how samsara is playing out its game, and I think I'm trapped in it. With Sakti Chakra Sandhane Vishwa Sangharaha, we have already done it. When you know how the veiling power of Maya works on you, you shall not be led into life blindfolded, because you know what is going to be done with you and what you are going to do with you under the influence of Maya. Once you are having that spark of self-awareness, you are a different person. Because now you're aware, you are everywhere, you are play acting, you are doing everything, but you know what's your goal. You don't get deluded, you don't get distracted, you neither get frightened, you're neither rendered anxious, nor you are having too many expectations to look for a meaningful reality or meaningful fall out of whatever is going on around you, because you have changed your destination in your Google map. And destination is no different from your own real self. And that is that Shiva Tattva. So use that Shakti Chankra Sandhana Vishwa Sangharaha, you know the meaning, you withdraw yourself, you focus on that Parama truth. And how do you do it? In Anavapaya is saying, do a bit of sprinkling of your other states, all your activities with that Shiva consciousness. इति पूर्वोक्त सूत्रे विश्वोत्तीर्ण अनुभव प्राप्त उद्यम एव उपायम अत्र अस्ति तथा च उद्यम भैरव इत्यादिन सूत्रेण प्रतिपादनं भवति अस्यां स्थितौ योगी उद्यम शक्ति चक्रम अनुसंधानो जागरादि दशासु लौकिक समस्त व्यवहारान् प्रकुर्वन् अपि. It's a very beautiful sentence. Even if you are doing, in a phenomenal reality, we are catching a bus, you are filing your income tax, you are catching a flight, you are caught in a traffic jam. This is Vyavahara Dasa. This is how we behave. This is the word used in our parampara called Vyavahara Dasa. This is how you are engaging with reality around you at a very micro mini state of your consciousness. Very minimal kind of involvement. Now he's saying, even if you are there, prakurbanapi, chidgana chamatkaranam anubhavam, you are able to have the magical presence of that chidgana rasha, that Shiva Tattva in your everyday life. What does it give you? It gives you a sense of fulfillment. There are two people. One is very quiet and collected because he knows the secret. The other one is anxious. That is the basic difference. Anubhavam prapnoti yam eva asya turyavastha asti. That is the fourth state. Evam cha tritaya bhokta vireshaha. The verse number, the sutra number 11, he is again reminding. Tritaya bhokta vireshaha. That vireshaha is that sambhava. He has already got bhairava patti. So vireshaha, he gets tritaya bhokta. He enjoys in all states. He is not harassed. He is not troubled. He is not caught up in any particular state, where he remains in steadfast in self-awareness of himself. He doesn't have swatantra hani, he doesn't have apurna manyata. He neither has a sense of vulnerability or deficit, neither does he think he is not in control of himself. The moment we think we are individuals, we are never in control of ourselves. Why? Because Prakriti, all these games are there. Once we cease to give importance to our existence as that of an individual, we are no more an individual. We are just a mini micro expression, a speck of consciousness, which is part of that universal consciousness. The power of who we are shall manifest out of that realization that we are, in fact, that universal consciousness, appearing as particular, appearing as transitory, appearing as either emotional or physically cornered, as stressed, and all that. This is for the phenomenal appearance of who we are, but that's not who we are. That is a beautiful saying, Prakurvanapi chidgana chamatkaranam चमत्करणानुभवं प्राप्नोति येमेव अस्य तुर्यावस्था अस्ति एवं च तृतीय भुक्ता विरेशः इत्यत्र सांभवपाय अनुरूप हठपाक युक्तितः. Sambhopaya is easily possible. How do you do this? Hatapaka yuktitaha. Hatapaka means, you follow the words. Hatha, very strong discipline with which, because you are not in Sambhopaka. So there are two students. One is in a very advanced state of research. He doesn't have to mug up the formulas and do a lot of practice. But what about the new entrant, the novice, who is in the first year undergrad course? No, he has to do a lot of wrestling. Hatapaka yuktita. Then he tries to mature. He tries to transform himself with a lot of self-imposed discipline. That is what he's saying. Hatapaka yuktitaha jagaridinam avastantam sansara agre prakadi bhavishyati. So he's saying, therefore you sort of graduate, you go forward. Now this is printing error, or is Refa or Kshemaraja not clear? Okay. अतएव प्रकृतसूत्रे तु आणवोपाय क्रमयुक्तितः खड्गकोश इव जागरादादिपदत्रयं तूर्य रस आनंदेन अविसिंचद इति विशेष द्योतकः. You see, खड्गकोश न्याय, that is also there is panchokoshatitah atma avastatraya sakshi. Khadgakosha Nyaya is you have that sword, you see, it hides in that particular. You put it in the case, you can pull it out. Similarly, these are the states in which our pure consciousness is kind of appearing as trapped, right? And with Nama Rupa, all kinds of upadhis. And once you realize, perfectly speaking, you are that Sampurna Satta, all the appearances are only confusing, then you are no more having any trouble. That is what he's saying. Now, there's a lot of discussion in other commentaries as to sort of how to go to that ultimate level, because they are saying Jagrat Avastha, Swapna Avastha, Sushupti Avastha, Turiya Avastha. In Kashmiri Saivism, they talk about a Turiya Stita Avastha, which is fifth state. Then they talk about another sixth state, and the seventh state is the ultimate, which they call the Pratyak Chaitanya. I'll try to sort of touch upon them a little tomorrow in the light of what we had discussed, in the sixth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, when we talked about different bhumis of yoga, right? There are different stages we have done in this Savitarka, Nirvitarka, Savichara, Nirvichara, and also these stages of meditation. It's 7 stages, the 5 vrittis and all that. I'll try to touch upon them, but not make it very complicated. We'll carry it forward tomorrow. So I'll stop it here. Any questions you can ask, or we can do the Santi Mantras. Any doubts, questions? We have a little time.
Swamiji, I understand it's a very tricky area, but still like to ask a question like you talked about individual consciousness and universal consciousness. As an example you cited is that ball, a salt ball merging into the seawater. Maybe sometime later we may throw some little more time how this individual consciousness is separate from universal consciousness, as well as is it a part and parcel of it, or is a subset of, I don't know what language I should use to express, but are they separate? I hope they are not separate, but how do we individual consciousness can encompass the whole universal consciousness? As you said, it's not possible, but maybe sometime later we can discuss on this.
But this I'll try to briefly touch upon it. We have a couple of minutes. So, very briefly, it's like this. So far, the Advaita Vedanta or Kashmiri Saivism is concerned, they are non-dualistic schools of thought. So, Brahma Satya Jagana Mithya, Jiva Brahmaiva Naparaha. Brahma is Satya, that is one truth. That is the only truth. And what about samsara that we see all around? This is not the ultimate reality, it is an appearance. And then what about us? Jiva Brahmaiva. We are not different from Brahman. So, Jiva Brahma Ekatva Pratipadanatmaka. This is the statement. Now, your question is beautiful. Are we part, a subset of that universal consciousness, or we become that universal consciousness, or we don't exist when the universal consciousness exists? We have discussed all that in Aparokya Anubhuti and even in Atmabodha and a couple of other Viveka Chudamani, we have discussed with it. Tattvamasi, that sentence, what they say is Tat Tvamasi, Tvam Tatasi. You are that. What is that? That is that universal consciousness. So what about me? So he's saying there is a Vachyartha and there is a Lakshyartha. Vachyartha of Jiva, Tvam is Jiva. Lakshyartha is that individual pure consciousness when you are in deep state of meditation. And what about Tat? Tat is Ishvara. That is Vachyartha. What is Lakshyartha? What is intended to be conveyed is that pure universal consciousness. So Ishvara and Parambrahma is Nirvikara Nishkala. That is how they explain the Advaita Vedanta. Even in Kashmiri Shaivism, we cannot be different from Lord Shiva. But there is, as I see, there will be a minor distinction between complete Advaita Vedanta and Kashmiri Shaivism, because here there is some duality which is allowed in the sadhana kala, during meditation, during practice. So you are trying to ascend to the level of universal consciousness. In Arnavapaya, it's Bheda Prathatmaka. In order to go to that Abheda Buddhi, we are making use of the dualistic consciousness. Not a problem. Whereas if you look at Madhvacharya, the Vaishnava Matas and the Saiva Matas traditional, some of them are dualistic. Jiva and Brahma, Bhakta and Bhagavan, Lord Krishna. You can never become Lord Krishna. So you do your sadhana, your individual consciousness, you go to Goloka Dhama. So you have that, they call it, it's like you are like a Anu. They'll say that you are like a tiny speck of fire, of a great fire. Okay, so they will say you are Karna Brahma. So there are different ways to explain it. But in the Kashmiri Saivism, what they say is, so there are two ways to look at it. So you will have individual